Okay, we're doing lesson number 19 today. Simplifying radicals. This concept is really important. Let me say it one more time. This concept is crucial. You've got to know how to do this, especially in geometry. I can't count how many times Mr. Egan will walk over to my room and say, "Did you teach your students last year how to simplify radicals?" And I say, "Yeah, I did. I taught them." He says, "All right, but make sure and teach it again this year." So I'm teaching it, and I'm going to show you how to simplify radicals. Uh, the way that I teach it is kind of goofy, but it's a way that you'll understand. So you kind of have to hang in here with me as I go through it, but I think you're going to understand as I go through it. So here we go. All right, how do you say this? How do you say it? It's called the square root of 4. That when I talk about a radical is a square root. They kind of mean the same thing. You should know already that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. You should know that. You should also know that the square root of, let's do another one. The square root of 25 is equal to 5. You know that. But what is the square root of, but what's the square root of 20? Well, you could, and I'll pull my calculator out here, you could plug in the square root of 20 into your calculator. How about I do the first two together? So square root of 4, okay, that gives me 2. Okay, that makes sense. Square root of 25, okay, doing this one right here, gives you 5. But what's the square root of 20? Well, square root of 20 is going to be 4.47. All right. Tonight, we're not looking for the answer of 4.47, so you can't use your calculator. We're going to be what's called simplifying radicals. And I'm going to use the first two examples as easy examples so you understand the pattern. So here's how we do this. We need to take the 4 and break it down, kind of like a factor tree. When you know that 4 is 2 times 2. All right, so here's everything's straightforward right now. So you just factor tree, 2 times 2. All right, now what I do is this. I imagine that 4 becomes a 2 times 2, because 2 times 2 is the same thing as 4. So nothing's changed. But I almost imagine like there being a cross on top of this radical. And I almost imagine this is like being a church. And we know that one of the things you do in church is get married. And the Bible says that when you get married, you want to find somebody that you have some likes, some things you have in common. You don't want to marry somebody completely different. You want to have some similarities. Yeah, some differences are good to kind of help out the marriage a little bit, but you want to have some strong similarities. And so if you look at these two people inside this chapel, you see a 2 and a 2, and they look at each other and they say, "You know what? We're both the same. I think we should get married." So the two twos go to the pastor, and they say, "We'd like to get married." And the pastor then says, "That's a great idea. Both of you are the same." And so the pastor then looks at both of them and says, "Do you want to get married?" They say yes, and he pronounces them husband and wife. Well, when he pronounces them husband and wife, the Bible says that the two become one. The two become one flesh. That's what the Bible says. So these two twos then become a 1-2, a single 2, not two separate 2s, but one single 2. And when you get married, you don't stay in the chapel. You leave the chapel. So these 2s kind of like become 1-2, and they leave the chapel. And the answer then is 2. Notice, what was the square root of 4? The square root of 4 was 2. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, "Mr. Fisk, I can do this without doing the chapel thing. I know the square root of 4 is 2. Just hang in here with me. It's going to get a little harder. Next one, 25. If I break down 25, that's 5 times 5. So I put those in the chapel. The 5 see each other. Oh, true love, true love. We can get married. They get married. Those 2 5s become 1 5, and he leaves the chapel. And he becomes, that doesn't help you out at all. You can't see a thing. How about I repeat that real quick? The 2 5s go inside the chapel. The pastor marries them. When they marry them, the 2 become 1 5, and that 5 leaves the chapel, and then we have 5 is the answer. And we know that the square root of 5, 25, is 5. Okay, let's do one a little more complicated. Let's do square root of 20. If I break down 20 with the factor tree, that's going to be 2 times 10. Circle the prime numbers. 10 can be still broken down. And then 2 times 5. So let's put the 2 and 5 inside the chapel. So it becomes 2 times 2 times 5. Now we have 3 people in the chapel. 2 of those 3 people notice each other and say, hey, we got a lot in common. I think we need to go find the pastor and get married. So they find the pastor and they get married. The pastor says these 2 2s get married and become 1 2 and leave the chapel. So it becomes 2 square root of 5. The 5 is left inside the chapel. You can't leave the chapel unless you get married. So the answer to this question, what is the square root of 20 up above? The answer to the square root of 20 is 2 root 5. That's the answer. How about we do one more? How about we do something like the square root of 27? Do one more. Square root of 27. Then we'll do some in your homework. Practice them. So 27. Break down 27. 3 times 9. And then 3 times 3. Those are all prime numbers. Put them all inside the chapel. 3 times 3 times 3. These 2 3s get married. Become one single 3 and leave the chapel. So it becomes 3 square root of 3. And that's it right there. That's simplifying radicals. And I have documentation that I taught Mr. Egan, I taught you all simplifying radicals. So, Mr. Egan, I taught what you told me to teach. Good luck on your homework.